Jayom Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribrajakacharya Ashtottara Satashi Shrimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinatha Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. We're continuing with the reading of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, written by His Holiness Satsvarup Das Goswami. We're on volume 4, continuing on the chapter entitled India, Dancing White Elephants. Who are the dancing white elephants? They're Prabhupada's Western disciples. To get an elephant to dance is very special, but to get a white elephant to dance. So Prabhupada had come from Calcutta, and some devotees were already in Bombay trying to establish something. And then the first group of about 20 devotees came from the West, from Europe and from America. And they all converged in Bombay for the Sadhu Sammelan at Chowpatty. Now, from that Sadhu Sammelan, Prabhupada and the devotees got a lot of publicity in the newspapers. They got a lot of invitations. Prabhupada began the life membership program in India for 1,111 rupees. You could get all of the books printed by Prabhupada and also stay in the ISKCON temples around the world. By that time, there were about 40 temples. So now Prabhupada has been invited to Amritsar, and he's taking a group of devotees there. They went by train, the Punjab Mail, and the devotees, of course, they got to see a whole different side of India, all the different types of sadhus at the Sadhu Sammelan in Bombay. But at this Vedanta Sammelan, they were quite surprised because it was mostly Mayavadis. And of course, in Amritsar, in Punjab, very few people spoke English. So they had to sit through hours and hours of Hindi rhetoric about Vedanta. And although the program organizers had promised Prabhupada again and again, we'll put you first, he would complain that my disciples don't know Hindi, they have to sit for so many hours. But they never did it because they always saved Prabhupada and the kirtan for last, because the most number of people were there and they were all waiting for that kirtan. So that meant everybody had to wait till the very end to get what they wanted, which was the kirtan. So they were using Prabhupada and the Western disciples as a ploy, that you're all waiting for that, so now you have to sit through the whole program until you get your kirtan. So we're in the midst of that now. A devotee asked Prabhupada about a Mayavad slogan he saw posted, Tat Tvam Asi, with the English translation underneath, you are that too. This was a favorite saying of the impersonalists who imagined that the living entity is God, Prabhupada said. He explained elaborately the distinction between God and the living entity and told how God, when he appears, displays certain unmistakable characteristics that identify him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These yogis will just talk and talk Vedanta, Prabhupada said. It is simply mental speculation, and they never come to any conclusion. They will go on speculating for years and lifetimes, but we will realize God simply by eating. And from the plate of prasadam before him, he took a sweet and popped it into his mouth. Now, so we had the Sadhu Sammelan, now we have the Vedanta Sammelan. And then after this is going to be the Gita Jayanti Sammelan in Indore. Where again, Prabhupada and the disciples will hear so many different types of interpretations of the Bhagavad-Gita. In fact, there wasn't even one picture of Prabhupada there. So the devotees are seeing now the importance of Krishna consciousness in the Vedic culture because it's been so covered over by so many misunderstandings of Krishna and his teachings. In the midst of his activities in Amritsar, Prabhupada continued to think of his spiritual children in various places throughout the world, and he regularly wrote to them. If you see in the Veda base, per month, Prabhupada would write hundreds of letters, sometimes in one day, 20 letters. And this was in the midst of his going to anywhere from 6 to 10 programs, house programs, and attending the Pando programs. He never stopped. And at night, when everyone was completely exhausted, following Prabhupada program after program, he would stay up all night and do his translations. To the devotees in Calcutta, he wrote, I am very much anxious to hear what you are doing there, and if you have made any life members by this time. So while the screen's coming on, I'll read the letter that Prabhupada wrote to Jayapataka Swami. My dear Jayapataka Maharaj, by this time Jayapataka had taken sannyas. Please accept my blessings. I beg to acknowledge receipt of your letter dated 6th November, along with enclosed plans for the Hamilton House. Regarding the Hamilton House, it is a first-class building for our preaching work with its central location. My Guru Maharaj wanted us to open our centers in the most congested parts of major cities. Now, then why did Prabhupada make our Krishna Balaram temple in Ramanreti? Well, when Prabhupada made the temple here, it was the boondocks. There was nothing here. But the whole city moved here when he made this temple. Same with Mayapur. Mayapur temple was in the middle of the rice paddies. But when we opened our temple, you see now there's no room anywhere. People are putting up skyscrapers everywhere just to accommodate everyone. So this is what happens when you preach Krishna consciousness. We do not want a place in a quiet and solitary place. So offer them 6 to 7 lakhs rupees immediately. Start with 6 lakhs, and eventually you can offer them 7 lakhs. Prabhupada, he knew how to do these transactions. but that is the highest you can go, and we shall arrange rupees 1 lakh in advance. If they agree, we will come immediately and finish the business. You should get the society immediately registered through Mr. Sen under the Societies Act, not under the Companies Act. Please do this as quickly as possible, as men are expecting us to be a bona fide institution. So in the Western countries, especially in America, each temple, and now there were about 40 temples, had to do their registration individually in the city where they were. First it was New York, and then after New York made the Constitution and the incorporation, those same papers were incorporated in California. And then from California, all the different temples had to make separate incorporations because things are not so centralized in America. In India, it was different. They were making, Prabhupada's recommending here, to do it under the Societies Act. But ultimately, what Prabhupada had them do was the Charity Commission in Bombay. If you get the Charity Commission, the endorsement, then that is all India. So all of our temples in India are under the Bureau, and that Bureau submits to the Charity Commission, and that's how we get our tax deduction, through just that one Charity Commission approval. So in this case, because we didn't yet have that, Prabhupada is recommending that they get incorporation under the Societies Act rather than the Companies Act. Because Prabhupada understood Calcutta, he was a Calcutta boy. To his disciples in Bombay, he wrote, I am very anxious to know your situation, whether you have removed to the Ram temple or where you are stationed now. Because one private person had invited the devotees, because Prabhupada wasn't there now, it was just a small group of devotees who were trying to make life members and look for property so that they can have their own temple. So one gentleman, he invited the devotees to stay at his private home, which he named Ram Sharanam, because he worshipped Lord Ram there in his home. So he wanted to know whether the devotees had moved there yet. Where were they? To Kurandar in Los Angeles, he wrote, I hope everything is going on well with you in our Los Angeles World Headquarters. Please send me a report of your general activities and also your governing body commission activities, because you'll remember before Prabhupada left in August of 1970, he established the first 12 executive members of the governing body commission. And then he went on to Japan and then went on to Calcutta to start his World Sankirtan movement. So there was also a governing body commissioner for India at that time. It was Tamal Krishna. He was still a Grihasta. Most of the GBCs at that time were Grihastas. Please offer my blessings to all the members of our temples. How is the deity worship being carried on? Because Srila Prabhupada had established Rukmini Dwarkadish, and that was where the pujaris were being sent to learn how to worship the deities in all of the temples around the world. So I've given this letter here now. My dear Kurandar, please accept my blessings. I received your special delivery letter of 15th October 1970 and have noted the contents with great pleasure. You are one of my most determined students, and for this reason, I think that Krishna is giving you all facilities for serving him. Prabhupada, he explained that Prabhupada loves all of his disciples, and he gives his mercy to all of his disciples equally. But if someone is doing exceptional service, then he especially gives his mercy to that devotee so that they can continue and do more service. It is most encouraging to me to see that you are spreading this movement so nicely, and I thank you for this. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has forecast that this Hare Krishna mantra will be heard in every nook and cranny of the globe. He is God, so it will happen. That is a fact. Has it happened? Yes, it's happened. Everywhere you go, everyone's heard about Krishna. You can go to Africa, you can go to the Antarctica. Now they have Srimad Bhagavatam there. So if we take advantage, then we may take the credit. But if we do not, someone else will. No one else could. Only Prabhupada could do it. You are right to just depend on Krishna. When he sees that you are sincere, he will reveal everything to you. And this preaching work is your key to success in Krishna consciousness. Just see Bhagavad-Gita as it is. Chapter 18, verses 68-69. For one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. So when you engage in devotional service, what do you get? What's the fruit? You get more devotional service. And ultimately, you get to go back to Krishna and eternally engage in devotional service directly in his personal association. Replying to Upendra. Now, Upendra, we can remember him from the early days of San Francisco. He went to Fiji because there's very large Indian community there. They were brought there as indentured servants, laborers for the sugarcane fields and different types of plantation work. And they practically, aside from the natives who lived there, it was all Indians there. Regarding worship of demigods, the whole Hindu society is absorbed in this business. So unless our preaching work is very vigorous, it is very difficult to stop them. Because who's talking about Krishna? Who wants Krishna? What do you get when you worship Krishna? You become a beggar. But if you worship Durga, if you worship Shiva, then you get so much wonderful prosperity. You get children, you get land, you get money. You worship Krishna, everything gets taken away from you. Sarva dharmam parityaja. So not many people were worshiping Krishna. They were worshiping demigods to get different benefits. And Upendra, going there alone with his wife, Chitralekha, they were up against all the demigod worshippers, trying to convince them, give up everything and just surrender to Krishna. And to Bhavananda in New York. Now, Bhavananda had come from 26 Second Avenue. The devotees got a very nice place just a few blocks away at 61 Second Avenue. And they made a beautiful temple there. Many, many devotees joined. And then from there, they got it used to be a Catholic convent where the nuns lived. 4-story building. Enough for it. There must have been 250 devotees living in that temple. And they moved the ISKCON press there. So much was going on in New York. It was a very, very nice temple in Brooklyn, New York, instead of Manhattan, where the temple had been before. And Bhavananda was sent there from San Francisco and Los Angeles to be the temple president. So he wrote, please conduct the Sankirtan program regularly, and that will give me great pleasure. Regarding our new temple in Brooklyn, Krishna has given you very good chance to serve him. So Bhavananda, he was from New Jersey. New Jersey and New York, they're right next to each other. And he lived in New York. He knew New York very well. So Sankirtan in New York City was amazing, absolutely amazing. There's a place in New York called Broadway. And that's where all of the theaters and all of the plays go on. It's the drama sets. It's like Bollywood, but not for movies, for plays and for dramas. And it would open at 8 o'clock at night, go on till 2 o'clock in the morning, all the dramas and plays, the theaters. So that's when the devotees would go out on Sankirtan. And at that time, there was a very famous drama called Hair. And in that was the Hare Krishna mantra. So the devotees would stand in front and they would chant Hare Krishna and hand out books after the people would be coming out of the theater. So Sankirtan was very, very special in New York. They had so many wonderful places, Times Square, Washington Park, all these big, big places where hundreds of thousands of people would hear the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Prabhupada wanted Bhavananda to specifically concentrate on Sankirtan in New York. October 30th, 1970. After 10 days in Amritsar, Prabhupada was on the train heading back to Bombay. He rode in a small first-class compartment with Guru Das, while the rest of his disciples rode in another part of the train. Prabhupada's car, being close to the locomotive, caught soot from the engine's smokestack until he was soon flecked from head to foot with small black particles. So in those days, we didn't have electric trains. There were no wires or anything like that. It was all done by coal. And the coal, it had a big smokestack in the locomotive. And if you were right behind that locomotive, all that coal smoke would come into your windows and you'd be covered with black soot the whole trip. It was a 2-day trip. So this is what happened. Even Prabhupada wasn't spared in the first class compartment. Jamuna. We were traveling between Amritsar and Delhi, and I decided to go see how Prabhupada was doing, if there was anything he wanted, because sometimes when the train stopped, he would ask for a devotee to purchase fresh fruit and other things from the vendors on the train platform. So that was a little surprising for the devotees, because the devotees had been taught to be very strict in America. You had to be strict because you didn't know what your meat, fish, and eggs, onion, garlic. There was nothing that didn't have those things. So we never took anything from outside, maybe some fruit, something like that. But Prabhupada, he understood. I mean, you were traveling in a train. There was no way to get fresh prasadam. Sometimes he would have the devotees buy samosas from the train platform. And they were wondering, we would never buy samosa. You don't know if there's onions in it or who made it and where it came from. And then Prabhupada explained that when you purchase something and you give money for something, that it's a purifying exchange. So that way, and Prabhupada knew what to get and what not to get. So he taught the devotees that you can get things when you in a dire situation, like when you're in a train. Just by the purchase, it becomes purified. So Kashali and I made our way through several cars to Prabhupada's first-class compartment. He was lying back on several pillows with one knee up, looking like a monarch. He had a beautiful smile on his face. So this is Jamuna and Kashalya. You remember that Jamuna and her sister, Janaki. Janaki was the first female disciple of Srila Prabhupada, the wife of Mukunda. And then they went and Jamuna came for their wedding. Then they went to San Francisco, opened the temple there. Jamuna came there, married Guru Das. Then Janaki, Mukunda, Jamuna, Guru Das, and Shamsundar and Malati. Shamsundar was the school friend of Jamuna from Oregon. They all went to London and started the temple there. Now Prabhupada had them all come to India. Mukunda and Janaki stayed in London to run the temple there. And Jamuna, Guru Das, Shamsundar, and Malati and little Saraswati were with Prabhupada in India. So Jamuna was no longer with her sister. So Kashalya and Jamuna became like sisters. They would do everything together. So now they're going through the train cars to go see Prabhupada in the first class compartment. This is Jamuna in the background, and there's Kashalya. We paid our obeisances And Srila Prabhupada looked at us with a twinkle in his eye. Is there anything hot to eat? He asked. What do you mean? I said. Do you want me to get your lunch, Srila Prabhupada? No, he said, not that. Some rice, some hot rice. So when you travel in those days, now it's different. In those days, it was very austere traveling in the trains. There was no ready-made meals or anything. I mean, the devotees wouldn't take it anyway. And I remember I was traveling once with Prabhupada's sister from Mathura to Howrah. And she only brought one thing with two things. One thing was a tin can full of muri and a little bottle of mustard oil. And whenever it was time to take prasadam, she'd open up the can, pour in the mustard oil, close the can, shake it up, and that was our meal. And then the first day, we had, you could take a little something that would last for a few hours. She fried up some aloo sabji, because if you cook aloo without any water in it, it might last for a few hours. That was it. 3-day trip. Murti. So whatever they had for Prabhupada, it couldn't have been cooked because there was no way to get cooked things on a 2-3 day train ride. So Prabhupada wanted some hot rice. If you can make me some, I said, what do you mean, Srila Prabhupada, from the train? Because they did have a canteen in the train, filthy, dirty, just terrible. He said, well, no, if you could make me some hot rice. I said I would. I had no idea how I was going to prepare hot rice for Srila Prabhupada, but Kashali and I found our way to the kitchen. Nobody was there, only 2 men dressed in black, turmeric-stained shorts, standing over the coal stove smoking cigarettes. I didn't know how to speak Hindi, but I said the best I could. My Guru Maharaj wants some chawal, some hot rice. The men laughed at us as if we were crazy. And so I thought we had better find someone who would give us permission. But when we found the manager of the restaurant, he said, no, impossible. You can't cook in the kitchen. I said, I'm sorry, this is for my Guru Maharaj. There was no question of choice. I have said to him that I will fix rice, and I have to fulfill this. But again, he said, no, it is impossible. I went and found the conductor of the train and explained the situation to him. If I can't do this for my spiritual master, I said, then I might as well jump off the train. The conductor took us very seriously and said, of course, you can fix whatever you like in the kitchen. So he brought us back to the kitchen and told the head of the kitchen as well as the head of the restaurant that he was giving us permission. The coal stove was gigantic, and I was completely unfamiliar with it. All sorts of aluminum pots and dishes were hanging around the kitchen. We cleaned out one of the pots as best we could, boiled the water, and put in the chawal. We prepared a gigantic platter of very hot rice with butter, fresh lemon, salt, and pepper, and carried it through the train to Prabhupada's compartment. Here's your rice, Srila Prabhupada, I said as we entered, and his eyes lit up and opened wide. He gave a huge grin. Oh, my goddesses of fortune have come, he said. They have brought me my rice. Thank you very much. This is just what I wanted. He ate so much from this huge plate. He took a little kachori and puri with it, because I had dried things in the tiffin, and a little pickle. He was very pleased. This is Kashalya. That night, the train pulled into the New Delhi station with its scurrying crowds of passengers, hawking vendors, refreshment counters, newsstands, beggars, and coolies in their dingy red jackets. The stopover would be 20 minutes. Suddenly, a man appeared in Prabhupada's compartment. identifying himself as D.D. Gupta. Although Prabhupada had not met him before, they had corresponded. He was a Delhi man, not especially influential or wealthy, but he wanted to help. Offering Prabhupada a box of sweets, he invited him to stay in Delhi. Prabhupada, however, already had other plans and had even wired ahead to notify the devotees in Bombay of his arrival. Prabhupada looked over at Gurudas, who was feeling happy and especially blessed to have this intimate contact with his spiritual master. 12 hours they had spent in the same compartment, eating together, talking together. Just minutes before, Prabhupada had been stressing the importance of farming and explaining how the scarcity of food was due to mismanagement, not to lack of rain or arable land. Gurudas was happy, and he was looking forward to the next leg of the journey with Prabhupada, anticipating the scenery and his return to Bombay. So Gurudas has written a book called By His Example, and he describes in his book about this 12-hour journey with Srila Prabhupada. Because we know that in first-class compartments, there's 4 beds. So Prabhupada sat on one bed, and Gurudas had to keep all the luggage on the other plate, because they only had 2. They didn't know who was upstairs. The 2 people who were upstairs came in, put all their luggage on the top, and left and never came back. So Prabhupada and Gurudas had that whole compartment to themselves. And Prabhupada, whenever he would get some prasadam, he would take something, then he would take another thali, put something else on that thali, and give it to Gurudas. And whenever Prabhupada rested, he would lie down, and he would tell Gurudas, now you lie down also. So it was a very intimate time that Gurudas got to be all alone with Prabhupada for 12 complete hours. And he was very much looking forward to the next leg of the trip from Delhi to Bombay. This man is inviting us, Prabhupada said. Get down and see what you can do. Get down? There was hardly time to ask questions or discuss what to do in Delhi. The train would be leaving immediately. Gurudas said he would stay, but he would need help. He and Prabhupada agreed on a team. Jamuna, Gurudas's wife, Giriraj, Bruce, who was Bhakta Bruce, who became Bhanudas, and Gopal. Gopal, who's our Gopal. Yes. Gurudas ran to tell his wife and the brahmacharis the news. The devotees had little trouble picking up their light bags and getting off the train, but they felt sad to be leaving Srila Prabhupada. As the train pulled away, they offered obeisances outside Prabhupada's window and waved to him, praying for his mercy. This was an austerity, perhaps a tiny drop of what Prabhupada had gone through when he had first arrived in America. So Gurudas, he explains what happened when they got off of the train. Apparently, Mr. D.D. Gupta, Gurudas describes, he said he must have been the most frugal person in the whole world. He had a motor scooter, a bike, and there were 5 devotees. He wanted to fit all of the 5 devotees and the luggage onto his motor scooter. Now, before all the devotees left and got off the train, Prabhupada went into his robes, took out 50 rupees, and gave it to Gurudas. This is all they had. And Mr. D.D. Gupta, he realized they're not all going to fit on his motorcycle. So he bargained with one of the taxi drivers to take them to Delhi Gate. And then when Mr. Gupta realized that he was going to have to pay for it, he almost had a nervous breakdown. And when they got to the place that Mr. Gupta was telling Prabhupada, oh, I've got a whole building with rooms and a courtyard, the place was, no running water, no bathrooms, little rooms big enough for just a bed and a sink. And that was it. And then Mr. Gupta warned them that at night the mongoose would come in because it was just bars on the windows, so the mongoose would stay in the rooms also. So, so the devotees were really suffering there. And they had no money. They didn't know anybody in Delhi. They had Sankirtan, that was it. So they struggled a lot, but they were successful. You can see the picture in Prabhupada's house. Finally, they got to meet Indira Gandhi, give her books. They made life members. They made many MPs. They got their first temple, which was in Shanti Niketan, Niketan. It's just near the in South Delhi, near where the airport is now. In those days, it was Palam Airport, not the Indira Gandhi Airport. So they were successful because Prabhupada wanted us to open a temple in Delhi. So now Prabhupada has arrived. In our last date was October 30th, and now it's November 1970. For the next month, Prabhupada and his disciples stayed at Manohar Lal Agarwal's Sitaram temple in Chamber. Chamber is down in the fort area, right? Actually, it was Mr. Agarwal's residence, but since he maintained the worship of Sitaram deities, he called his home Ram Sharanam, under the shelter of Lord Ram. Prabhupada occupied one room, and his disciples 2 other rooms with access to a kitchen and bath. The Sitaram temple and suburban neighborhood provided a peaceful atmosphere, and Prabhupada returned to concentrated work on Srimad Bhagavatam, corresponding with ISKCON centers around the world and looking after the small group of disciples who were with him. He had great hope Krishna would provide a way for ISKCON to become well established in India. So we have to remember that Srila Prabhupada, he was doing everything alone in India before he came to America. He grew up in Calcutta, so he knew Calcutta very well. His business then moved to Allahabad, Prayagraj. That's where the Kumbh Mela is. He knew Prayag very well. He lived in Delhi to print his books. He knew Delhi very well. He also lived in Bombay because there he established the Gaudiya Math temple there and did his business there. So Prabhupada was quite conversant. He understood the cities of India, these major cities in northern and western India, quite well. And he was training the devotees how to preach now in India, making life members. He would give names, and the devotees were learning how to collect names also. They would go to one person, get names of other people who might become members, go to them saying, we've been recommended by so-and-so, he's become a life member, you are like that. So Prabhupada was training them because it was quite different. Prabhupada did not have the devotees go out on street Sankirtan here because he didn't want the devotees to appear as sadhu beggars. So he was holding programs in private homes. He was going by invitation to Pando programs and expanding his life membership program. We are just now receiving great publicity, and it is reported that Bombay has now got its atmosphere filled with Krishna consciousness. This is from one of Prabhupada's letters. It is a fact, and the important members of the Bombay community are appreciating our movement. For the present, I am more prominent than all swamis. People are appreciating. What are these swamis? They cannot go outside. There is a Bengali saying that a jackal is king in a small forest. The story is that a jackal became king in the forest by fooling the other animals for some time, but he remained always a jackal, and his ruse was at last exposed. So until Prabhupada came along, of course, Vivekananda, he had gone to Chicago to a theological convention and had introduced Mayavad philosophy there. He went once and then came back. And such a big, oh, wonderful, he's gone, he's spread Vedic culture in America. He went one time. He didn't get any followers, nothing like that, no establishing of temples or centers. When Prabhupada went, he was able to make disciples. He opened temples, eventually all over the world. And when Prabhupada brought back his Western disciples, he had proof. The proof is there. See, these young Westerners, and Prabhupada would even introduce them. They were taking intoxicants, they were sex mongers, they were eating meat. Now they've given up everything, and they're just in love with Krishna. So he used his disciples as proof that this philosophy has potency. And that way Prabhupada became very, very famous in these cities where he was preaching with the Western devotees. Although Mr. Agarwal was honored that Prabhupada had accepted his invitation and was now living as his guest, Prabhupada knew that the situation would ultimately prove inconvenient for everyone involved. Now, the early days for the few devotees who were here with Prabhupada, about 20 devotees, they were dependent upon their hosts for whatever they ate, whatever their bedding, their living arrangements, everything. And they didn't really have a choice. Whatever was fed to them, that's what they ate. It was very quite difficult, actually. We had some rules that had to be set up. One was, Prabhupada taught us these rules. One was, you have to sit on your left hand, because in the Western countries, there's no distinctions between right hand and left hand. Here, everything is very cultured. You have your left hand that does specific things, and you eat with your right hand. But the Westerners, they didn't know the difference. So we had to sit with our left hand like this. And then the other rule was, because Western devotees are not accustomed to spicy food, and we all know how charitable and loving-hearted the Indian hosts are. When you go to their home, they want to give you more and more and more. And the devotees just couldn't eat that much. And they would have several programs in one day sometimes. So what they would do is, when there was too much on their plate, they would secretly take some of the food on their plate and put it on the next person's plate. So that was the next rule. You're not allowed to put anything else on anybody else's plate. So these were the behind-the-scene rules that we all had to learn when we were on these programs. And it was very difficult because Western devotees weren't accustomed to the spicy food of India, and they would get sick, really sick. But for Prabhupada, they tolerated everything. So Prabhupada knew that it was going to be inconvenient for everyone. First, for the hosts, they had to feed 20 people 3 times a day. That's a big responsibility. And then the people who were being fed, they would get sick. So it became an inconvenience on both sides. To open one's home to a dozen guests and feed them daily was a strain, even for a wealthy man. And for the devotees to live in those tiny quarters under the already trying conditions of irregular hours, frequent sickness, and tropical heat was not easy. The solution, of course, was for the devotees to get their own place, an ISKCON center in Bombay. As a sannyasi, Prabhupada was prepared to stay anywhere, moving as often as necessary, accepting alms. He had lived that way for years before going to America. But now he had 20 spiritual children to support in India and more on the way. They were not mature. They wanted them near him. He wanted them near him so that they could observe how he did things and imbibe the spirit of preaching in India. So whenever, of course, they would invite Prabhupada for a program, and along with Prabhupada, all the devotees would come with him. So they would get to watch Prabhupada and see how he behaved at these programs, how he ate, how he talked, how he preached. They were learning from Prabhupada directly how to spread Krishna consciousness in India, despite the heat, which nobody was accustomed to, and the living conditions. They would have, for instance, in Amritsar, it was very cold then. It was October. It gets cold in Amritsar. They gave one room for Prabhupada and one more room. But there were 9 devotees. So how could 9 devotees fit in one room? So Prabhupada had just the 2 ladies stay in that one room, and all the men had to sleep outside. So in Amritsar in October, it's quite, and it's not that they gave a lot of bedding. You know, it was very difficult for them. So they would get sick also. When a Hindu organization in downtown Bombay requested a few devotees to attend a 3-day program, Prabhupada approved. But when the program was over and the leaders of the organization invited the devotees to stay on indefinitely, Prabhupada said no. They will simply eat and sleep. Better for them to stay with him, our crowded Ram Sharanam. So he also knew his children. If they were given an opportunity, they would eat and sleep. Mrs. Sumati Morarji, the wealthy director of Scindia Steamship Lines, had financed the printing of the 3rd volume of Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam in 1964. And in 1965, she had provided him free passage to America. Now she invited Prabhupada to speak at Scindia House near Juhu Beach. It was in Andheri, actually, which is just the next Mahalla after Juhu. Seated on stage, Prabhupada and Sumati Morarji reminisced, celebrating Prabhupada's success. So Prabhupada had previously stayed there when Prabhupada was in Bombay. We'll hear about this next week. On the 29th, we'll be celebrating Prabhupada's departure for America. And we'll hear about how Prabhupada was able to convince Sumati Morarji to give him a free passage on a cargo steamship. And he had very nice accommodations. Sumati Morarji gave him her own cabin in the boat. Very nice. Complimentary room and food. And Sumati Morarji made sure that the captain would take care of a Vaishnava Brahmin very nicely. They had extra fruits and grains for Prabhupada. So they had a very, very reciprocal, loving relationship because Sumati Morarji helped Prabhupada a lot with printing of the 3rd volume of Srimad Bhagavatam and then giving him free passage to go to America. So now that he had come back, she invited him again to come to Scindia House and have a program there. I did not think you would come back alive, Mrs. Morarji said, but I am so much pleased to see you. No longer was Prabhupada the poor sadhu Mrs. Morarji had met 6 years ago. He was a success. And Sumati Morarji and her staff and friends were happy to hear about the Krishna consciousness movement in the West. So even when Prabhupada was in America from 1965 up to 1970, he wrote to her and would tell her about his different successes. And she would always encourage him. Sometimes when he was first there the first year, he would go regularly to the Scindia office on the port to find out when the next boat was going back, because he was penniless. But she would say, no, don't come back until you've accomplished what you went there for. So she was always encouraging him. And now he had come back a success. Before Prabhupada's lecture, Tamal Krishna formally introduced him to the audience. Srila Prabhupada left for the West 5 years ago from this city. He had almost no money. He went to New York, where he chanted Hare Krishna in a park underneath a tree. Soon he opened a temple where he continued his chanting and held classes on Vedic philosophy. Many people came, and gradually he opened new centers: San Francisco, Montreal, Boston, and so on. So you can see here some of these original devotees. There's Tamal Krishna, Revati Nandan, there's Gopal in the back, there's Dinanath. Dinanath was staying here. He was staying in the Russian house for some time. He was best Sankirtan leader. Now he has many devotees in over 40 temples. In each temple, there is a full-scale program of Sankirtan, deity worship, and prasadam distribution. India has sent many ambassadors and ministers to the West, but none of them can say that he made the Americans give up eating meat, fish, and eggs and got them to chant Hare Krishna. Everyone is indebted to Srila Prabhupada because he came to relieve the suffering of all the fallen souls. So this is a photo of Srila Prabhupada after he got the temple at 3764 Watsika Avenue in Los Angeles. Gargamuni was the temple president at that time. And you can see some of the disciples that Prabhupada had made there. He made 6 disciples before he left to come back to India. And he named that temple Rukmini Dwarkadish, were the presiding deities. And the temple was called New Dwarka. So in New Dwarka, many, many families, so many children. It was the world headquarters of our ISKCON at that time in 1970. Prabhupada sang, this is when Prabhupada was having his program at the Scindia House. And because he had lived there before he went to America, he knew so many of the staff members, and Mrs. Morarji was there, and she had a wonderful program arranged for him. So for the program, this is what Prabhupada did. Prabhupada sang 3 verses from the Brahma Samhita and invited the audience to join in the chorus. Govindam Adipurusam Tamaham Bhajami. Second. After speaking for half an hour, he accepted prasadam with Sumati Morarji and honored guests and dignitaries. He met Dr. C. Bali and his wife, the famous dancer and movie actress Vaijayanti. He spoke only briefly with them, and they became life members of ISKCON. So Vaijayanti Mala, she was the first superstar of India. Most famous movie actress and dancer. She was from Tamil Nadu. She started as a teenage actress, went to Bollywood, played in all the biggest movies, and then she married Dr. C. Bali. He had already been married, but that's the way it is. Vaijayanti. This is she's praising Prabhupada here. Swami Prabhupada made his preaching so simple that even a layperson would understand what our great philosophy and our great teachings meant. Not only was he propagating the great culture of our Lord Krishna, but he was making the people of other parts of the world really understand its meaning and its significance. By his simple and yet very great teachings of Krishna, he took this message so far and so wide that it's really a marvel that a person single-handedly could do so much. He not only preached and, just talked about the whole thing, but he also established so many centers in so many parts of the world. This is really amazing that he could do it in spite of all difficulties. But his perseverance and his persistence, I think, kept him on. So they also became life members there in Bombay. They were at the program. And again, when you go out to make life members and you show them the list of who's become a life member, naturally you want to also become a life member when you see the list of all these great personalities who become members. The public sensation of Prabhupada's disciples chanting in the streets of Bombay and at the Sadhu Samaj had died down. The regular news coverage had stopped. Still, Prabhupada was sought after by many important people in Bombay. His accomplishments after 5 years in America commanded the esteem and attention of intelligent Indians, and daily he received respectable visitors who accepted him as the authority on Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada would get anywhere from 6 to 12 invitations every day, and he would go from house to house, benedicting, lecturing, honoring prasadam, and looking for a temple. Now Prabhupada, because he had stayed at the Scindia house before he went to America, he stayed in the staff quarters of the Scindia steamship there in Andheri. He would regularly go to Juhu, and he saw the land of Juhu. Also, Sumati Morarji lived there in Juhu, and she would have Prabhupada come regularly to her home, and he would lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam to her. So Prabhupada had his eye on the Juhu land, even from before he went to America, and eventually that became successful after a good fight. All right, so I think we'll stop here. We'll do one more. The Indians regarded Prabhupada as unique. Even in a culture where swamis and holy men are commonly treated with respect, he was regarded as special. His visitors would beg him to come to their homes and sanctify them. And this was also in line with Prabhupada's desire. He wanted to engage the Indians in chanting Hare Krishna, hearing the philosophy of Bhagavad-Gita, and honoring the Lord's prasadam. He wanted them to appreciate the purity of the Krishna consciousness movement, enlist as life members of ISKCON, and help him establish a large center in Bombay. Now we have so many centers in Bombay, but our main center in Juhu, that was established by Srila Prabhupada personally, and before he left this world, he fulfilled his promise to Sri Sri Radha Rasa Bihari that he would build a temple for them. He would carry a picture of Radha Rasa Bihari wherever he went around the world to remind himself, I have to build this temple. So that temple was built. Prabhupada personally went there from London, his last trip. He went to Bombay to make sure the temple would be ready. And because it wasn't ready in time before Srila Prabhupada left this world in November, on Makar Sankranti of 1978, the temple was opened for Sri Sri Radha Rasa Bihari. Hare Krishna. Jai.
Hare Krishna